Good morning, students. Today we discuss a very important topic in cardiovascular pharmacology, that is heart failure. Learning objectives are at the end of the session, you should be able to discuss pathophysiology of heart failure. You should be able to enumerate the drug used for heart failure, to classify them, to discuss the current status of drugs in the pharmacotherapy of heart failure, and the approaches to the management of heart failure. Various types of heart failure are the low output heart failure, which could be of two types. One is the left sided heart failure, other is right sided heart failure. And then there could be high output failure, which could be secondary to other comorbidities like anemia, like thyrotoxicosis, like carpulmonale, which is the heart failure due to lung disease. Now, when we talk about left-sided heart failure, there could be systolic dysfunction, the dysfunction during the contraction, during systole. So that could be due to the previous or current myocardial infarction, or due to the rate disturbance, arrhythmias, or there could be diastolic dysfunction that is due to long-standing hypertension. So long-standing hypertension, it can change the size of the heart. The heart size increases due to continuous workload over the heart, afterload that is there, and the chamber becomes hypertrophic. The muscle becomes hypertrophic, and the capacity of the chamber, heart chamber, is reduced. So that leads to diastolic dysfunction. Then there is right-sided heart failure. That could be again due to this lung disorder, which is carpulmonale. So that is because there is back pressure when there is problem with the lungs. There is back pressure in the pulmonary arteries. So that leads to the increased load on the right side of the heart. Then it could be secondary, right-sided heart failure could be secondary to the left-sided failure. So whatever the reason, ultimately the left-sided heart failure does occur, whatever be the initial reasons for that. So left-sided heart failure, when it is there, that is called as congestive heart failure, because that leads to the symptoms of congestion. So that what those are we will be discussing. Now when heart fails, that is the perfusion of various tissues that is decreased. The blood circulation to various tissues is reduced. So low perfusion, it leads to various problems. Low perfusion activates salt water retention in kidney due to activation of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. There is reflex sympathetic system activation. So that leads to vasoconstriction. There is increased workload due to water retention as well as due to vasoconstriction, and that leads to further dilatation of already dilated heart. As the heart dilates beyond a limit, the force of contraction weakens and cardiac output drops further. The myocytes, they undergo hypertrophy and fibrosis, and heart is weakened more and more. So that is what is called as cardiac remodeling, or heart remodeling. So here it is shown in a flow chart. Heart failure, That means the dropping force of contraction and cardiac output. So that leads to decreased perfusion of tissues, including the renal perfusion. Also, that leads to reflex sympathetic stimulation, as shown over here. Now, renal perfusion, when it is dropped, it leads to stimulation of renin secretion, leading to the full renin-angiotensin cascade, that is angiotensin 1, angiotensin 2. This in turn leads to aldosterone secretion. Now, aldosterone leads to sodium and water retention. Also, decreasing GFR as such, it leads to increased water retention. On the other hand side, the sympathetic stimulation, there is increase in the force of contraction, heart rate, and a tendency to increase the cardiac output, which is falling. Okay, so initially cardiac output may increase to some extent, but later on, as the heart weakens further and further, cardiac output ultimately drops further. Now, sympathetic stimulation also leads to vasoconstriction. This vasoconstriction is also caused by angiotensin. So, vasoconstriction leads to this is due to alpha stimulation due to sympathetic and angiotensin. Then increased preload because of the venoconstriction, increased afterload due to arteriolar constriction. So this leads to both increase in the preload as well as afterload. Now three things are happening. Preload is increasing, afterload is increasing, as well as there is sodium and water retention, which is all these things, they lead to the symptoms which are there: further weakening of heart, further dropping of cardiac output, low perfusion, fatigue, breathlessness, and due to water retention there is edema. Also pulmonary congestion. So what are the ultimate signs and symptoms of heart failure? There is edema feet, there is dyspnea, there is cough, and if you hear the respiratory sounds with a stethoscope, you can hear fine bilateral craps, especially on the lower side of the chest. So this typical clinical presentation, that could be sufficient for the diagnosis. Edema feet, which is a pitting type of edema feet, we'll show this in the next slide. Then breathlessness, palpitation, fatigability, and there could be this is a slow progressing disease, and as the disease progresses, these symptoms, they worsen. Then investigations you can order for help in diagnosis are X-ray chest, echocardiography, renal function, serum proteins. So X-ray chest has a typical picture in case of heart failure, congestive heart failure. Then echocardiography, there is the slow movement of the cardiac muscles. Also, the heart size can be judged, as well as the chamber size, the size of the ventricles, that can be ventricular cavity, that can be assessed from echocardiography. So renal function is done to rule out whether there is any problem with the kidney. So because that can also lead to edema. Serum proteins, if there is alteration in the serum proteins, especially on the If there is low serum proteins are there, then there could be a similar kind of picture, edema feet could be there. So all these tests are to establish the diagnosis of congestive heart failure. Some are for definitive diagnosis, others are to rule out various other problems that could be there. So in the differential diagnosis. So this slide, it shows the pitting type of edema. So what that does that mean? When there is edema and the patient comes to you, you can press upon the ankle of the patient with your thumb and put pressure for some time. When you release the pressure, a pit may form over there. So this type of edema is due to the water collection inside the connective tissues. So this is what is called as pitting type of edema, and it is a cardinal presentation of cardinal feature of congestive heart failure. It's one of the features. Chest X-ray. So you can see this chest X-ray from a patient, and you can see the congested chest. So hazy lung fields are seen, especially on the lower lobes. And if the heart can be visualized, you can see that the heart size is also increased. So this was regarding the diagnosis of heart failure and various investigations to establish the diagnosis. Then heart failure, I told you about this insidious nature. It is a slowly progressing disease, and if the causes are not removed, it progresses to a stage where patient is unable to carry out any physical activity without discomfort, and symptoms are there when the patient is sitting at rest. So this is the fourth stage, the last stage of heart failure. So patient is unable to carry out any physical activity without discomfort. So if physical activity is undertaken, the discomfort is increased. So this is the fourth stage of heart failure. So New York Heart Association has classified the heart failure into four stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. At stage 1, there is no limitation of physical activity, and ordinary physical activity does not cause the signs and symptoms, that is breathlessness, fatigue, palpitation. Stage 2, where slight limitation of physical activity is there, the patient is comfortable at rest, but ordinary activity leads to undue breathlessness, fatigue and palpitations. Stage 3, not limitation of physical activity is there, less than ordinary physical activity, slightest activity, it can lead to undue breathlessness, fatigue and palpitation. And then stage 4, where the symptoms are there even at rest. So these are NIA classes of heart failure, New York Heart Association classes of heart failure. Now we come to the drugs for heart failure. So we can broadly classify the drugs into two. One are those which improve the symptoms only, do not affect the course of the disease. Others are which can improve the survival rate in heart failure. So those drugs which are used to improve the symptoms are like inotropes. Inotropes are which are having positive inotropic action on the heart. That is increase the force of contraction. Cardiotonic drugs. So these are like digoxin, sympathomimetics, PDE3 inhibitors, phosphodiesterase enzyme 3 inhibitors. Digoxin is a drug which belongs to a class of drugs known as cardiac glycosides. Then vasodilators like renin-angiotensin inhibitors, nitrates, and some miscellaneous vasodilators like hydralazine. Then diuretics, loop diuretics are mainly used, although other kind of diuretics like hydrochlorothiazide can be used also. Natriuretic peptides, nasiritide is the example. Hyperpolarization activated cyclic nucleotide gated channel blockers, which are in short form called as HCN channel blockers. So example is ivabradine. Then those drugs which are used to improve the survival, there is ACE inhibitors, there is angiotensin receptor blockers. Then there are beta blockers. Then there are spironolactone, which is a potassium sparing diuretic. So all these drugs, they are shown to improve the survival in various studies. So we have seen this cascade of pathophysiology of heart failure already. So let's see where various drug classes they act. ACE inhibitors, they act at this level. So at the level of renin-angiotensin cascade. Aldosterone antagonist, they inhibit the aldosterone component of renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. Beta blockers, diuretics, as you can see, vasodilators, and inotropes. Inotropes, they increase the pump itself, they increase the force of contraction. So these are various sites at which these drugs they act. Now we talk about the individual drug classes. The positive inotropes, there are cardiac glycosides, mainly digitalis. Digitalis is a combined name for mainly two drugs, digitoxin and digoxin, out of cardiac glycosides. So there are other drugs also which are gitoxin, ouabine, and thivatin. So mainly digoxin is used out of these number of drugs. Then sympathomimetics, there is dopamine, there is dobutamine. Out of all the sympathomimetics, these are the drugs which are used in congestive heart failure. Then phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors, there is two drugs are there, amrinone and milrinone. So these are the positive inotropic drugs which increase the force of contraction. Now when we talk about cardiac glycosides out of these, glycosides, these are obtained from a variety of natural sources. They reduce the number of hospitalizations, but there is no effect on mortality, and they are toxic drugs. They have got a narrow therapeutic index. Side effects: there is arrhythmia, there is nausea, there is confusion. Arrhythmia is a serious adverse effect of digoxin. So, especially because it is also having a narrow therapeutic index. So, you have to be cautious. Then, pharmacokinetics. Oral absorption is good for most of these agents. Digitoxin is more protein bound compared to digoxin. Digitoxin is mainly metabolized to digoxin inside the body, which is excreted through the kidney. Large distribution is there. They have got a long plasma half-life, around 40 hours for digoxin, and they tend to accumulate inside the body with multiple doses. Then, regarding the mechanism of action and what is the basic action of these drugs, so they are cardiotonic drugs. They have got a positive inotropic action. Increase force of contraction, tend to increase the cardiac output as well as uh, this thing, the ejection fraction. And the other effect is that they are having a negative chronotropic effect. That is, heart rate is decreased. So force of contraction is increased, but heart rate is decreased. The duration of Sicily is abbreviated. So that leads to a number of beneficial effects actually. There is greater time for heart to rest. The diastolic size of heart is reduced. Due to that, the oxygen consumption is reduced. So the heart does more work but consumes less of oxygen. Now coming to the mechanism of action, the drugs, they act on a pump in the cardiomyocyte that is known as sodium potassium ATPase pump. Now this sodium potassium ATPase, it exchanges sodium and potassium. The sodium goes outside the myocyte and potassium goes inside when this pump is working normally. Now it works in conjunction with this pump, it works in conjunction with another exchanger, and that is sodium calcium exchanger. Now when this pump is working normally, it promotes the sodium extrusion from the myocyte, and this sodium extrusion, it leads to decreased inhibition of the sodium calcium exchanger when digitalis is working on the sodium potassium ATPase. Now let's understand that again. When sodium potassium ATPase, it is working normally, the calcium is extruded out along with sodium from the cell in exchange with sodium. So more of calcium is going outside the myocyte normally. But when digitalis inhibits sodium potassium ATPase, then calcium tends to retain inside the myocyte more, as shown over in this picture. So if calcium is retained inside the myocyte, there is more tendency for the myocyte to contract. So there is increased inotropy. So ultimately leading to the positive inotropic action of the muscle fiber. So this was the mechanism of action of digitalis. Then the current status of these cardiac glycosides or digoxin in the heart failure. Now it is a drug which was very commonly used around a decade back for heart failure. But now its use has been limited to certain specific cases. Now it is still useful in heart failure with atrial fibrillation when both these things are happening together. Also, it is useful in heart failure which is refractory to the first line drugs which are now more used as compared to digoxin, like ACE inhibitors and beta blockers. It is useful in decompensated heart failure, and it is useful when there is atrial flutter, when there is paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia along with heart failure. But it has got limited or no role in high output failure, in heart failure with mitral stenosis, in heart failure due to constrictive pericarditis, and it is contraindicated in heart failure with AV block because AV block tends to be aggravated with the use of these drugs. And it is also contraindicated in cardiomyopathy. So overall, current status is that these drugs are very rarely used nowadays, only in specific set of patients. Now, what are the problems with digoxin therapy? Arrhythmias. So there is more risk of arrhythmias with these drugs, and especially so in elderly. These arrhythmias tend to happen more when there is hypokalemia. Now remember that the drug is acting on the sodium potassium ATPase, and in case of this potassium ion, it is using the same ATPase pump for its exchange into the myocyte. Therefore, both potassium ion and this drug, they are competing for sodium potassium ATPase pump. So if there is hypokalemia, less of potassium, the digoxin action is potentiated. Also, in impaired renal function, there are more chances of the toxicity arrhythmias. So, in case of hypokalemia, we can administer potassium. In case of toxicity as such, we can use what are called as anti-digoxin antibodies, so which could be helpful in toxicity. Also, these drugs they have tendency to cumulate, and cumulative effect toxicity again could be there. So drug holidays are given when prolonged digitalization, prolonged drug use is there. So for example, you continue the drugs for 5 days a week and then give 2 days holidays. Then these drugs are having a small therapeutic index. So the optimal dose range is 0.5 to 1.4 nanogram per deciliter. So that is the plasma concentration where these drugs they are having. This is the therapeutic range of these drugs. Then, because the index is narrow, the TDM is indicated. Limited and selective role, as I told you, these drugs are having nowadays. Now, when coming to the dose of these drugs, there is slow digitalization and there is rapid digitalization. Slow digitalization 0.125 to 0.25 milligram per day. This is safer but has a slow onset, almost a week for the onset of action is there. So maybe increased to 0.375 to 0.5 milligram at weekly intervals. Rapid digitalization we give 0.5 to 1 milligram stat followed by 0.25 every 6 hours till the response is there. So this particular mode, there is rapid onset of action but it needs monitoring for toxicity. Then we come to sympathomimetics. Dopamine is a drug which is having a dose dependent action. So it is given intravenous 2 to 5 microgram per kg per minute. That rate, it induces the action on beta 1 and dopamine D1 receptors in the kidney, leading to increased GFR and increased renal blood flow. So these actions are helpful in heart failure at this dose rate. If it is increased to 4 to 10 microgram, the rate is increased, then there is more beta 1 stimulation. So up to this dose range, it can be used in heart failure. But further increase in the dose, that leads to alpha 1 stimulation, leading to vasoconstriction and increased workload on heart, so not useful in heart failure. So infusion rate for heart failure is kept below 5 microgram per kg per minute. Dobutamine, it increases the cardiac output, urinary output and stroke volume just like dopamine. Infusion rate is 2 to 8 microgram per kg per minute. It is preferred over dopamine for heart failure, but you have to monitor the heart rate and blood pressure. Sympathomimetics, they cannot be used for long term because tolerance develops to their action. Phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors, they are selective PDE3 inhibitors, ambrinon and milinon. They increase the force of contraction and cause vasodilatation. So they are called as inodilators. They are used for short-term support in advanced heart failure. So that is the restricted use of these drugs. They are quite toxic drugs. Ambrinon has a quick onset of action, increases cardiac output, decreases peripheral resistance, but long-term use, it increases mortality. It can cause thrombocytopenia, nausea, abdominal pain, diarrhea, liver damage, and even arrhythmias. Milinon is more potent and more selective than ambrinon, shorter acting, preferred over ambrinon for short-term use. Thrombocytopenia is not that significant as with ambrinon, but increased mortality is also reported with milinon. Then vasodilators, they predominantly decrease the preload. This is so for nitrates. Hydralazine, minoxidil, they predominantly decrease the afterload. So nitrates predominantly preload, hydralazine, minoxidil predominantly preload. Then there are drugs which decrease both preload and afterload, phentolamine, nitroprusside. When we talk about nitrates, they are vasodilators and therefore decrease the preload. reduce ventricular and diastolic volume, improve ejection fraction. Now, one of the drug GTN, glycerol trinitrate, given intravenous provides relief in acute left ventricular failure. Nitrate tolerance, it limits the use in routine treatment. Hydralazine, it's an arteriodilator, decreases the afterload, reduces aortic impedance and ventricular wall stress, but it can cause reflex tachycardia and fluid retention. So its long-term use is also not advisable. So not used as monotherapy. Useful in combination with ACE inhibitors and diuretics. Useful in patients with renal insufficiency who cannot tolerate ACE inhibitors. Sodium nitroprusside, it's a high efficacy arteriovenous dilator, decreases both preload and afterload, administered intravenous infusion, and it is minutely titratable. Useful in severe decompensated heart failure along with diuretics and inotropic drugs. Not used for long-term use. Diuretics, then loop diuretics and thiazides are useful. Decrease the fluid overload, decrease cardiac size, improve the pumping fraction of heart, therefore decreasing afterload, decrease pulmonary edema, useful in combination with ACE inhibitors, vasodilators and beta blockers. Potassium sparing diuretics like spironolactone, eplerenone, they have got an additional survival benefit also. Nesiritide, a recombinant form of human brain natriuretic peptide. Now these peptides, they cause natriuresis, diuresis and vasodilatation. So all these actions, they are helpful in heart failure. Half-life is 20 minutes for nesiritide. It's given intravenous. Useful in refractory type of heart failure, improves the heart failure symptomatically. Ivermectin, it is HCN channel blocker, impedes the generation of what is called as a funny current. It is a pacemaker current and is denoted by IF. It slows down the heart rate, used at adjunct in cases with normal rhythm and heart rate more than 70 beats per minute. So less than that, if heart rate is less than that, it's not used. Used along with beta blockers or also as alternative to beta blockers. Then drugs with survival benefit, they have got a favorable effect on cardiac remodeling like ACE inhibitors, ARBs, then ARNIs. These are specific kind of drugs which are used in heart failure. Then beta blockers and spironolactone. All these drugs, they have got a survival benefit, a proven benefit in studies. ACE inhibitors and ARBs, they are orally effective arteriovenous dilators, reduce both preload and afterload, can reverse cardiac remodeling, conclusively demonstrated to reduce morbidity as well as mortality, useful in combination with hydralazine, diuretics or beta blockers, and is useful in all grades of heart failure. They are the first line drugs being used for heart failure nowadays. ARNIs, These are actually the combination of angiotensin receptor blockers and neprilysin inhibitors. What is neprilysin? It is an enzyme which degrades natriuretic peptides. Now, if a neprilysin is inhibited, then more of these natriuretic peptide, the endogenous natriuretic peptide, these are available. So there are various natriuretic peptides like brain-derived natriuretic peptide or atrial natriuretic peptide. Now, neprilysin inhibitor like sacubitril, they increase the levels of the peptides, and as we have seen already, these peptides are useful in heart failure. So, ARNIs, they are approved to be used. This sacubitril, it is approved to be used in conjunction with ARBs like valsartan, and together they are called as ARNIs. That is angiotensin receptor neprilysin inhibitors. Then the other drugs with survival benefit are beta blockers like metoprolol, carvedilol, bisoprolol. The first sentence is a bit tricky. Use in congestive heart failure is potentially hazardous. So that is when you use beta blockers without considering the condition of the patient. So that cannot be done. Beta blockers are useful in congestive heart failure, but only in a specific set of patients, because otherwise it may precipitate severe deterioration in congestive heart failure. So patients must be selected carefully, should be used only when a patient has been stabilized and not during an acute presentation when there is decompensated congestive heart failure. So then they can lead to further aggravation of the symptoms. Because beta blockers, they block the action of sympathetic system, and they are demonstrated to reduce the morbidity and mortality. They decrease cardiac output initially, but later on it gets normalized. The slow increase in cardiac output happens with 1 to 4 months of use of beta blockers. Started with low dose and gradual increase over about a week is there in the dose. It is indicated in New York Heart Association class 2 and 3 heart failure with ejection fraction less than 35%, stopped whenever decompensation occurs, restarted after compensation has been achieved with other drugs. So if used cautiously and judiciously in this way, they are shown to improve the survival. So on the left hand side you see two graphs, one on the upper side, one on the lower side. On the upper side you can see carvedilol, it is increasing the survival as compared to placebo. And on the lower side it is bisoprolol, which is improving the survival as compared to the placebo. On the right hand side, this is the graph which is showing mortality. So mortality with metoprolol, which is a beta blocker, it is shown over here as compared to placebo. So percent mortality is reduced. So a proven benefit is there. Then spironolactone, it negates the harmful effects of aldosterone, which is raised in case of congestive heart failure. So hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, fibrosis, remodeling, sodium and water retention, all these are harmful effects of raised levels of aldosterone. And spironolactone, it inhibits aldosterone and therefore negates its harmful effects. It is demonstrated to improve survival in combination with ACE inhibitors, but it is contraindicated whenever there is renal insufficiency. Now we have discussed about various drug classes useful in heart failure. Let us discuss the pharmacotherapy of heart failure. So factors which influence the drug choice in heart failure. First is the stage of heart failure. That is, it is stage 1, 2, 3, 4. So what is the stage of the heart failure? Then hemodynamic status of the patient. What is the ejection fraction? Now ejection fraction is that fraction which has been pumped out of the left ventricle from out of the total blood that is there in the ventricular chamber. So that fraction that can be measured with echocardiography. So ejection fraction is reduced in heart failure, and the status of ejection fraction, that is one factor that decides the drug use. Then blood pressure, heart rate and fluid load, that also decides what kind of drug you are going to use. Any comorbidities that are there and any contraindications for a particular patient for a particular drug. So this is the treatment algorithm. We usually start with the first line drugs that are there are ACE inhibitors or alternatively angiotensin receptor blockers. In compensated cases, you can use beta blockers along with that, especially in stage 3 and 4 patients, as we have discussed already. Then if still not improved, you can use loop diuretics, spironolactone. You increase the dosage to the maximum tolerated, and if still not improved, you can use the next class of drugs. Then if still not improved, ARNIs, still not improved. When you are using ARNIs, that means you have to use angiotensin receptor blockers along with neprilysin inhibitors. So then you have to stop ACE inhibitor if you have used ACE inhibitors initially. Then there are nitrates, hydralazine in a specific set of patients, like in the African blacks. You can use these alternative class of drugs because ACE inhibitors or ARBs are not that useful in this set of patient. Along with that, you can use digoxin in severely decompensated heart failure, along with atrial fibrillation. When this whole pharmacotherapy has been used and still there is no improvement, then the only option that remains is the surgical option, the heart transplant. We discuss the latest American Heart Association 2017 guidelines for pharmacotherapy of heart failure. For this purpose, they have divided the heart failure into 4 stages: stage A, B, C and D. Stage A is those patients which are at high risk for heart failure but without structural heart disease or symptoms of heart failure. Only high risk cases. Then stage B, structural disease is there but without signs and symptoms. Stage C, structural disease with prior or current symptoms of heart failure. And stage D, refractory heart failure requiring specialized interventions. As compared to the New York Heart Association stages, the all the four stages, they are comparable with the last two stages of AHA, stage C and D. So, because symptoms are considered only in the stage C of AHA guidelines. So, treatment in AHA guidelines with the drugs, it starts with stage C. So, treatment starts with stage C. The first line drugs are ACE inhibitors or ARBs with a lower dose which is increased with at intervals to the maximum tolerated doses or till improvement is there. Depending upon the need, you can add diuretics, and in specific patients, decompensated patients, you can add beta blockers. In the decompensated non-congested patients, beta blockers may even be the first line drugs. The doses are titrated fortnightly to the maximum tolerated. In persistently symptomatic African Americans, the blacks, hydralazine and isosorbate dinitrate, they are added. Now, but on those patients, for those patients which are stable on ACE inhibitors and or on ARBs, you can switch over to ARNIs. And if the initial treatment was ACE inhibitors, then just stop ACE inhibitors before switching over to ARNIs. And a 36 hours washout period is given. Then, if there are no contraindication, you can add aldosterone antagonists like spironolactone. Ivabradine is a drug which is a SCN channel blocker. It is added if ejection fraction is less than 35%, but heart rate is more than 70 beats per minute. So then ivabradine could be useful in those cases where still symptomatic improvement is not there. So this is the pharmacotherapy according to the latest American Heart Association guidelines. Despite this therapy, the mortality remains high. Although with ACE inhibitors, there is a 35% risk reduction of mortality and hospitalization, and for beta blockers, it is around 38% risk reduction. But still, the mortality remains high. The 4-year mortality remains at around 40%. So this is a disease where, despite of pharmacotherapy and other measures, the ultimate survival is reduced and mortality remains high. With that, we conclude our lecture on congestive heart failure. Thank you so much.